Hi everybody, in this video, I'm going to talk about using keyboard shortcuts. Yeah, keyboard, this thing, to navigate QuickBooks Online in the most fast and efficient way possible so you can get your work done much quicker. Now there's going to be 3 types of shortcuts I'm going to give you in this video, and I'm going to split the video in those 3 sections. The first type is the built-in keyboard shortcuts. Interestingly enough, you can press a keyboard shortcut to get this window to pop up in the screen and tell you all the shortcuts are available, and I'm actually going to go through a couple of them to kind of show you how they work. The second type of keyboard shortcuts I'm going to give you are the RightTool shortcuts. So RightTool is a third-party app that you add into QuickBooks Online. It's this super cool right navigation bar that opens and closes to the right. There's a free version, you can download and install it, but we extended the amount of keyboard shortcuts you can use with QuickBooks. So not just the ones that QuickBooks gives you, plus a whole bunch of additional. I guarantee you're gonna love them. And it's a free app. So you can download the app, install it, and you can start using those keyboard shortcuts. And lastly, the third type are gonna be the browser shortcuts, the Google Chrome shortcuts that you can use. And there's so many browser shortcuts, but the ones that are mostly relevant on the day-to-day QuickBooks Online workflow. So let's get started. So we'll start with Control-Alt question mark, or that would be Control-Option question mark on the Mac, which will open up this additional information screen that actually shows you all the keyboard shortcuts you can press if you use the combination Control-Alt on the PC or Control-Option on the Mac. So you combine them with any of these here, and it will open any of these pages. So I'm going to close that and show you. So Control-Alt-I opens up an invoice. Escape on the keyboard will close a window that should close any window that has an X on it. So those are only the overlay screens like invoices, estimates, that sort of thing. So I'll hit escape. I'm going to do Control-Option-E. That should open an estimate. Press escape. Let's do Control-Option-X. That opens up the expense, and I hit escape to close it. Control-Option-J. That opens up the journal entry. Press X to close it. Control-Option-W. That opens up the check screen. Press X to close it. So that's the first set of shortcuts you need to know, which is how to get to a few of those transactions. Something that's not a transaction but is also really useful is Control-Alt-L, which should take you to all lists. That's to configure your chart of accounts, your classes, your locations, your products and services, etc., etc. Notice that there's no X, so pressing escape doesn't do anything. We'll talk about, when we talk about the browser shortcuts, how to go back, so to navigate backwards, essentially to enable that little X button, that little back arrow button. You can do it with the keyboard shortcut. We'll talk about that when we talk about the built-in Chrome shortcuts. Then we have Control-Alt-A. That opens up the chart of accounts. So those are all really useful for you to know. And then the last one from this list that I want to show you is going to be this global search, which is pretty interesting. And then we'll talk a little bit about Zen mode, because that one's actually pretty interesting. That's the full screen mode. So let's do global search. I'm going to escape out of that, and I'm going to hit Control-Alt-F. And what that does is it moves the cursor up to the search screen where you can search whatever you want. So if I type A and D, it filters, and then it looks for every transaction that has A and D in it, right? So whether it's something in the memo, customer name, something like that. I could also actually use natural language to search for transactions. So for example, I can say invoices under 500, press enter, and QuickBooks is smart enough to know that if I type that, it actually wants to search for an invoice that is less than 500. So that's actually pretty cool. So Control-Alt-F to highlight this up. Let's do bills between 1,000 and 2,000. Press enter, and then it'll search that particular transaction type and a dollar amount. Now, the only thing I don't like about this, if I just type 500, for example, it searches for 500 in all sorts of strange ways, and it doesn't really get me what I want. Notice that it says 221 transactions. If I click on that, it gives me a bunch of random things that don't really have to do with 500. There's some 500, but they don't all have to do with 500. So that's actually not that clean of a search. So if you're looking for a transaction of an exact dollar amount, you do the Control-Alt-F, but instead of typing 500, you're actually going to type the word exactly. So you're going to do exactly 500. Then you press enter, and then it knows that what you mean is a specific transaction equals to the dollar amount exactly for 500. That's just how QuickBooks works. Don't shoot the messenger. Okay, so the last thing I'll show you is Zen mode. Zen mode is super cool. So for example, let's say I am on my banking screen, and this is a screen that God knows I need a lot of extra space because there's a lot of things going on and there's a lot of space being taken. I hit Control period, and what happens is that left rail and the top navigation bar both go away. Okay, that's actually the same thing as clicking on this little icon. So you can click on that little icon. The problem is that that icon doesn't show in all screens. So for example, let's say I'm in the reconcile page, and there's no icon to enable the Zen mode. So you have to know the keyboard shortcut, right? So if you want that more space, you hit Control period or Command period on the Mac, and it removes that left navigation bar and that top navigation bar. So that gives you a little bit of extra real estate for you to work with, and I think those are just super useful shortcuts. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to put this URL in the description so you can have this page in your bookmarks. And all the shortcuts that I talked about are listed here, and that's this first group of shortcuts that you see right there. But then if you scroll a little bit down, you're going to see what's called the RightTool added keyboard shortcuts. These things are game changers. Now, if you don't have RightTool installed, right here in the top of this page, you just click right there where it says download free extension. You just click on that. That will take you into the Chrome download page. Now, I already had it installed, so I'm just removing it. So yours should look like this. It would say add to Chrome. Notice the ratings, 5 stars, an incredible app. You should read the ratings because you'll be totally convinced to get this thing. I mean, I designed it. I worked with it with my brilliant partner, Mark, and we built like a really amazing extension that has over 30,000 users. So check it out. It's free, and there's also a paid version for you to really take your bookkeeping to the next level. But the keyboard shortcuts are all part of the free extension. So when I click right here, it says add to Chrome. It's just one click. Well, okay, 2 clicks. You click on add extension. That adds it. All you have to do is just close this little pop-up, go back into QuickBooks, refresh, and you will immediately, after a refresh, you're going to see that right-hand menu open up on the right. That's RightTool. Now, by default, RightTool, I'm going to click on the settings button here, has a whole bunch of settings turned on, including keyboard shortcuts, okay? And there is a little I button here that you could press so you can watch a video about that feature. Actually, the way RightTool works is anything you turn off and on pretty much customizes your experience. So no two RightTool users have the same experience. Everybody has their own experience because they turn off and on different things. And then the link that I was mentioning is right here. So you can go into the same link that I was telling you about, but I'm going to put this URL in the shortcut. Anyway, so when I go back into QuickBooks with RightTool installed, I can just collapse that to the right if I don't want to use the actual tools. But now I get to use all of the special keyboard shortcuts. Here's my favorite one. So you remember Control period and Command period, that does the Zen mode. However, sometimes I don't necessarily want to close both the top bar or the left rail. Sometimes I want the top bar so I can do my search. For example, as you remember, Control Alt F opens up the search. But if I am in Zen mode and do Control Command F, nothing happens. Why? Because that top bar has been closed. So we figured out that there could be a really interesting way for you to have the best of both worlds, get rid of that pesky left rail without getting rid of the top bar. So we're going to hit Control Option in a Mac or Control Command minus. That gets rid of just the left rail. Look at that. That's awesome. So it's kind of like a hybrid between Zen mode and getting rid of the left rail because I can still do Control Alt F and enable the search. So I actually think that's really useful. So Control Alt minus opens up that left rail again. Now this gray part on the left, that's called the left rail. But if I have this expanded piece open, which that's called the left navigation bar. Now QuickBooks doesn't have a direct shortcuts for opening and closing the left navigation bar, but we do. So that's going to be Control Option left arrow. I'm just pressing it a couple of times. See, I open and close, open and close. Look, my cursor's all the way over here. Open and close, left arrow. And then with the same Control Alt command, and it's Control Command on the Mac. So Control Alt right opens up RightTool. So Control Alt left opens and closes left arrow, Control Alt right or Control Command on the Mac opens up RightTool. So it's really cool because now you have total control over when you see open, and again, Control Alt minus or Control Option minus or Control Command minus on the Mac opens and closes. Again, every one of these things are going to be in this page, and then there's a button in the bottom where you can click on the printable PDF, so you have the printable version of this. I'm going to scroll down on this page. I'm going to take a look at all the different options that we have. So for example, there's a couple of these transactions that you cannot get by using the built-in shortcut. So for example, if I want to go into a bill or if I want to go into a register, okay, so I'm going to use Control Alt B or Control Alt Enter to do bill and register. So I'll show you that. So I'm going to come in here. I'll do Control Alt B or Control Command B on the Mac, and that goes into the bill in the same way that you could have done it with the built-in shortcut. So there's actually no built-in shortcut for opening bills for whatever reason. Press Escape to get rid of that. Let's do Control Command Enter or Control Alt Enter. And as accountants going into the check register, choosing the account that we want to work with, whichever bank account, that's where we're going to enter all these enter transactions manually. There's all sorts of reasons why we want to go straight into the register without having to go into the chart of accounts first. Now, there's two additional RightTool shortcuts that I love. When you're inside of a transaction, so an invoice, a journal entry, a check, or whatever, there's actually ways you can quickly access either the transaction journal or the transaction history. It's actually on the page that I gave you, which is H and Y. So Control Alt H does transaction history, and then Control Alt Y does transaction journal. Let me show you. So I'm looking at any transaction. I'm going to do Control Alt H. That takes me to the transaction history or the audit history. So it opens up the audit of that transaction so I can see all the history of that transaction. Anytime that was changed or edited, I can see that very, very clearly in the screen. If I go back into the transaction and do Control Alt Y, that's called the transaction journal. That's a little report that shows you sort of the guts of the transactions, the debits and the credits behind the transaction. And it's essentially what it saves me is not having to move the mouse down to more and then click on transaction journal or transaction history. Yes, both of those are available through clicks. But again, the idea behind the keyboard shortcut is to reduce the number of clicks. Let's do one more. Let's do this one. Reclassify transactions, definitely one of my favorite. So that's the / or / I'm not sure which one that is. So I'm going to do Control Alt /, and that takes me into the reclassify screen, probably the single most important screen for accounting professionals that want to go in there and reclassify a bunch of transactions in one shot. Okay, let's go back into the list of keyboard shortcuts. I am not going to cover all of them. Of course, I want you to install the extension and test them all out. I want to talk about these special keyboard shortcuts that were added to improve navigation. These are really cool. I already started with the left navigation and the right navigation bar. But there's a couple of really cool, very custom RightTool keyboard shortcuts. So I'm going to go back into QuickBooks here, and I'm going to open up the right toolbar. And I want you to notice when you first install RightTool, this is going to default into the favorites. And then we have here 1, 2, 3, all the way down to 0 or 10. So look at your keyboard and look at 1 through 0, and then just to the button to the left of 1. And then these are enabled by using the keyboard shortcut. So for example, that to open up a profit and loss really quick, I just hit Control Alt 4, and that opens up that particular keyboard shortcut because it's the 4th numbered one. Now, that might not be the most important thing that you want to access. Maybe you don't access a profit and loss too much, or maybe it's the single most important one. You can click and drag this all the way to the top, and that could be a 1. So now Control Alt 1 or Control Command 1 on the Mac, that will take you into that profit and loss. And for example, Control Alt 2 will take me into the bank feed. So you can completely customize those top 10 that we give you. But let's say, for example, beyond those 10. Now, those 10 are here. Those are the ones that I personally handpicked because these are the ones I use all the time. But there could be other things that you use, okay? And so there's multiple ways for you to add those custom bookmarks. So for example, let's say I'm going to go into a report, and I'm gonna pull up a particular report, and I'm gonna work, let's say, on classic mode, and I'm gonna make some changes to the report, whatever particular changes I wanna make, and I wanna click on run, and then whatever the report is done, this URL in the top literally gets saved into the customs by clicking up here where it says add custom. So when I click on add custom, now this is called, balance sheet, and I can just give it a name, last quarter XYZ, whatever text I want to give it. This URL on the top you don't have to pay attention to, that's just copying the URL. You click on save, and now it adds this yellow star letting you know that was a custom shortcut. But I can click and drag and put this in any number. So now all of a sudden, pretty much any page inside QuickBooks, it's available by Control-Alt-1 through 0 in a totally customizable experience where you can quickly access the things that you want. So that's a game changer for a lot of our users. Now here's another super cool feature. Let's say I do Command period or Control period. So I can go into Zen mode, get rid of the left rail and the top bar. Let's say I also close RightTool, and I'm in sort of full screen mode. Now, how do I access my new create button or my settings button? So I'll just give you some context here. So usually to create a transaction, we click on create, and then we go and in here, select the transaction, or we go here to the settings, click on that and go into the settings. So let's say, for example, I am on the full screen on Zen mode. I can't access either one. We got you covered. So you hit Control-Alt+, that opens up the create button, okay, which is right here, and I can press escape to get out of it. And let's say again, we're zoomed in, and I hit Control-Alt*, that opens up the settings button, and press escape to get out of it, okay? So again, it's just really, really useful whenever you are on Zoom, or maybe you don't want to move your mouse all the way over here to create. Maybe my mouse is all the way on the right. I just do the keyboard shortcut, and that way I don't have to move the mouse over there to click and then select where I want to be. Now, last RightTool thing, if you actually have the RightTool navigation bar open, you can hit Control space, and the cursor moves over to the search box. So it's similar to the QuickBooks search box, but what's really neat here, if I have a very specific dollar amount I'm looking for, let's say 697.03, I just press enter, and it opens up a new tab for you. That way you don't lose whatever tab you were working on. That way you can kind of start your research, and it will search for transactions of exactly that dollar amount. So we engineered it in such a way that if you are looking for exact dollar amounts, and let's say, for example, you are in Zen mode and you just want to search for particular transactions in there via RightTool, you can do that as well. So definitely going to invite you to go into this page, and after you install RightTool, try all the keyboard shortcuts. You'll be amazed, how awesome they are. And if any of them don't work, just message me or email me, and we'll try to figure out if there's some sort of challenge behind it. But now I'm going to talk about the Google Chrome shortcuts. These are the browser shortcuts, and these are super useful. This has nothing to do with RightTool. This is all built into the browser. And actually, these work whether you're working in QuickBooks or anything else. These are just navigation shortcuts of the browser. So I'm going to start with Control plus zooms in. Most people know that. Control minus zoom out. Those are really important, right? So I can zoom in, zoom out, of course, to adjust to the screen size, adjust the font. If I want to quickly go back to sort of 0 to 100%, I just hit Control 0 or Command 0, and that takes me back to 100%, but I usually zoom in until I am in the proper zoom in that's most comfortable for me. The next one is to go back. So you hit Control back arrow or Command back arrow on the Mac, and that has you go back, navigating as you click on things, you go back. So in that tab, you can navigate just by hitting Control back arrow or Command back arrow. And if I want to move forward on my navigation, assuming that I had pressed back at some point, I do the right arrow. So just Control right arrow or Command right arrow on the Mac, and that takes care of that. So that back and forward is super useful. Refreshes are also really important. So Control R or Command R does what's called a soft reset or a soft refresh, so it refreshes the screen. When your QuickBooks starts acting weird, then you want to do a hard refresh, which is Control Shift R or Command Shift R on the Mac, and that does a much harder refresh. And the harder refresh sometimes, again, it takes care of the little quirks that QuickBooks could have. Another interesting shortcut is doing control click or command click. So for example, let's say I'm opening up the create button, but I don't want to replace the page that I'm in. I want whatever I open here to open up in a new tab. So I'm going to hit control on the PC or command on the Mac, and that's going to open a new tab with that transaction. So anything that I control click is sort of the equivalent of right-clicking on it and then clicking on open link or new tab, because sometimes we'll do the right click and opening a new tab. All you have to do really is do the control click. So you don't have to use the menu to open the link in a new tab. You can always right click if you're used to that, but it works on reports too. That's actually a recent addition in the QuickBooks world. You click control click or command click and it opens up that report in a new tab, which is super useful, particularly when it comes to reports. Now, I'll go back to RightTool for a second. So if you have RightTool installed, one of the settings is called Reports Enhanced Drill Down. If you have that turned on, you actually don't have to hit Control or Command by default. We're going to make the assumption that every time you click on a number in a report, you automatically want the new tab. Okay, let's talk about other navigation shortcuts on the browser shortcuts, which is going to be the Control-Shift-T to create, or Control-T, Control-Shift-T to create or duplicate tabs. And we're also going to use Control-Click and Control 1 through 9 and kind of show you what those are. So let's say, for example, I'm back into QuickBooks, and let's say I have a couple of duplicated tabs. So I'm going to duplicate a couple of tabs here, just so we have a whole bunch of tabs open. So I have tab number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? And they're ordered, right? So I'm just going to switch a couple, so each of them kind of has different content. That way it's a little bit more, more contextual. So I have multiple tabs up here, okay? And they have different pages. If I hit Control 1 or Command 1, it goes to tab number 1. If I do Command 3, it jumps to tab number 3 in the order that they're in. Command 5 or Control 5, it goes to tab number 5. So if I have up to nine tabs, I can go from 1 through 9. Now I can also hit Control Tab to tab through the different tabs that I have open. So I'm just pressing Control Tab multiple times and I'm cycling through them. If I do Control Shift Tab, it goes backwards. Really, really cool. If I hit Control W, that actually will close, or Command W on the Mac, that will close the tab that I'm in. Command W, close the tab that I'm in. Command W to close the tab that I'm in. It just gets rid of the tabs. But if I want to bring them back, I hit Control Shift T and I bring back the tabs that I closed. Maybe I closed them by mistake. So Control W to start closing them and Control Shift T to bring them back. Now, if I just do Control T by itself, it opens up a new blank tab. So it just opened up a Google tab. Okay, so it's up to you if you want to go that route. Now, I'm going to give you one last bonus set of QuickBooks shortcuts. Now, most power users know about this, but there might be some people getting surprised by this, and that would be a good thing. I'm going to go into a transaction, and this is called the Date Picker Shortcuts. So any date picker you have in QuickBooks, or most date pickers, or anything that has a drop down of a date, you can manipulate using a single letter commands in your keyboard. So for example, today's date, the day I'm recording this, is actually September 2nd. So that's on today's date. If I press Y on the keyboard just once, it takes me to the beginning of the year. So think of the word year, Y is the first letter, takes me to the beginning of the year. If I press R, it takes me to the end of the year. And if I press T, it takes me back to today. Now, if I do just plus and minus a couple of times, it just goes up and down a date. So super, super simple. If I press M for the word month, the first letter of the word month, it goes back to the beginning of the month, and I can cycle through it. So I can press M, 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 and it just keeps going down the beginning of the month. If I press H for the last day of the month, H goes to the last day of the month, and I keep pressing H, 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 and it will go to that. So those are actually really useful, easy to know. So year, YR, then T for today, that's it. and then month, M and H. Those two are the most important ones. There's W for the beginning of the week and K for the end of the week. I don't use those very often, but you can. And another really cool one is the fact that you don't have to put the full year. So for example, let's say I want to do February 2nd. I can just do 0202 tab, and it pre-fills that for me with the current year. So if I want to do, let's say, March 13, I do 0313 tab, and it pre-fills that for me. And even better, if I want to do something for another year and I have to put the year in there, I don't have to put the slashes, and I don't have to put the 4-digit year. So let's say I want to do July 1st, 2023. So I do 070123, press tab, and it goes straight to that. So I know it's just a couple of strokes that we're saving, but this video is all about saving as many keystrokes as possible. So what do you think? Is this going to be useful for you? Is this going to be a game changer? Do you currently use RightTool? Are you excited about installing RightTool? Did you know about all these keyboard shortcuts? Are you surprised by any of them? Put all that stuff in the description below, and make sure you go to the link where you can see all the shortcuts and download the PDF if you want to have a printable format. Thank you. I'll see you in the next one.